The funeral director's voice droned on about celebrating a life well lived, while I stared at the mahogany casket holding the only person who'd ever truly seen me. Grandma Elena's favorite pearls caught the light streaming through the chapel windows, and I could almost hear her whispering, "Mija, stand up straight. You're worth more than they'll ever know. My name is Kylie Martinez," and I was about to discover just how right she was. "She looks so peaceful," Lucy murmured beside me, dabbing at her perfectly applied mascara with a tissue. My older sister had mastered the art of crying beautifully, tears that enhanced rather than smudged, sobs that drew sympathetic glances from the congregation of San Antonio's social elite. "She does," I agreed quietly, though peaceful wasn't the word I'd use. Grandma Elena looked defiant, even in death, like she was preparing for one last battle. Mom leaned across Lucy to squeeze my hand. "You're being so strong, sweetheart. Grandma would be proud of how you're handling this." Translation: Thank you for not making a scene like you did at Cousin Maria's quinceañera when you were 12. I'd learned early that in the Martinez family, being strong meant being invisible. Dad straightened his Armani tie and checked his Rolex. Even at his mother-in-law's funeral, Noel Martinez was networking. I watched him shake hands with the mayor, exchange business cards with the city councilman, and pose for a photo with the parish priest. Everything was an opportunity. "The reading of the will is at 2, Mom whispered. "We should stay close to the family afterward." Lucy nodded, already calculating. "Do you think she left anything substantial? I mean, she lived so modestly." I wanted to laugh. Grandma Elena had lived modestly by choice, not necessity. While my parents flaunted their wealth like peacocks, she'd quietly amassed a fortune through careful investments and a lifetime of smart decisions. She just never felt the need to prove it to anyone. The service ended, and we filed out into the blazing Texas heat. I hung back as my family worked the crowd, accepting condolences and making sure everyone knew about Dad's latest business venture or Lucy's upcoming charity gala. "Kylie." Helen Baker appeared at my elbow, her weathered face kind but tired. She ran the women's shelter downtown where Grandma Elena had volunteered for 20 years. "Your grandmother talked about you constantly. She was so proud." "Thank you for coming, Helen. I know she'd want you here." "She left specific instructions," Helen said quietly. "Said you'd understand when the time came. Said you were the one who inherited her heart." Before I could ask what she meant, Mom's voice cut through the humid air. "Kylie, come on, honey, the lawyer's waiting." The law office smelled like leather and old money. Mr. Castellanos had been the family attorney for decades, a silver-haired man who'd watched me grow up from behind wire-rimmed glasses. Today, those glasses couldn't hide his discomfort. "The will is straightforward," he began, shuffling papers. "Elena Martinez leaves her personal effects to be divided among family members, her home to her daughter Madeline, and—" He paused, glancing at me. "And her investment portfolio, valued at approximately $1.2 million, to her granddaughter Kylie Martinez, with the specific instruction that it be used for whatever brings you happiness." The silence in the room was deafening. Lucy's mouth fell open. "I'm sorry, what?" $1.2 million, Dad repeated slowly. "To Kylie." I felt like I was floating outside my body watching this scene unfold. Grandma Elena had left me everything. Not the golden child, not the successful businessman, not the social butterfly mother. Me. "Well," Mom said, her voice bright and sharp as broken glass, "isn't that wonderful? Our Kylie, so deserving." But I could see the wheels turning behind her eyes. Lucy was already leaning forward, her grief forgotten. "Of course you'll want to do something meaningful with it," Lucy said. "Something that honors Grandma's memory. We've actually been discussing a family foundation." "Lucy," I started, but Dad was already nodding enthusiastically. "Brilliant idea. The Martinez Family Foundation. Think of the good we could do, the recognition for Elena's legacy, and the tax benefits, Mom added with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I looked around the table at my family, my parents calculating the social capital, Lucy already seeing herself as the foundation's glamorous director, all of them assuming I'd simply hand over my inheritance, like I'd handed over everything else my entire life. Mr. Castellanos cleared his throat. The will specifies that Kylie has complete discretion over the funds. Of course she does, Mom said smoothly, and I'm sure she'll make the right choice. Won't you, sweetheart? The drive home was a symphony of subtle pressure. How proud Grandma would be to see us working together. How much good we could do as a family. How selfish it would be to keep such a gift to myself. That evening, I sat in my childhood bedroom, staring at the trust documents. Outside, I could hear Lucy on the phone with her friends, already planning the foundation's launch party. Mom appeared in my doorway with a folder and that same brittle smile. I've taken the liberty of having the paperwork drawn up, she said, sliding the documents across my desk. We've already decided on the structure. The Martinez Family Foundation will do such good work. I looked down at the signature line, then up at my mother's expectant face. We've already decided, I repeated quietly. Sign here and be grateful, Mom said, her mask slipping just enough to show the steel underneath. This is what family does. I picked up the pen, feeling something cold and sharp crystallize in my chest. For 28 years, I'd been grateful. I'd been easy. I'd been invisible. Not anymore. 3 weeks later, I stood in the marble foyer of the Martinez family home, watching a photographer adjust lighting equipment, while Lucy posed beside a giant check made out to the Martinez Family Foundation. Tilt your chin up just a touch, the photographer called out. Perfect. You're a natural. Lucy beamed, her honey blonde hair cascading over one shoulder of her designer blazer. The check behind her read $200,000 in bold letters. Though we all knew the actual amount was sitting in a trust account I'd reluctantly signed over to. This is going to look amazing in the Chronicle, Mom said, scrolling through her phone. I've already got calls from 3 different society magazines. Dad emerged from his study, straightening his tie. Channel 12 wants to do a feature story next week. Local family creates foundation to honor beloved matriarch. The publicity will be incredible. I sat on the antique settee, supposedly reviewing grant applications, but actually watching my family orchestrate their performance. Lucy had been named executive director naturally. Mom was director of public relations. Dad handled strategic partnerships, which meant leveraging the foundation for business connections. What's my official title again? I asked. Founding benefactor, Lucy said without looking away from the camera. It's perfect for you. Quiet, behind the scenes. Invisible, I muttered. What was that, honey? Mom asked. Nothing. The photographer finished, and Lucy immediately pulled out her phone to check the shots. These are gorgeous. Amber's going to die when she sees them. Amber Thompson, Lucy's best friend since college, had been hired as the foundation's program coordinator. Her main qualifications seemed to be an Instagram following and a talent for planning parties. Speaking of Amber, Dad said, she's found the perfect venue for the launch gala, the Majestic Theater. Very prestigious. How much? I asked. $50,000 for the evening, Lucy said casually. But think of the exposure. I did quick math in my head. $50,000 for one night, plus catering, plus decorations, plus Lucy's new wardrobe for the event. We were already talking about a 6-figure party to celebrate giving money away. Seems expensive for a charity event, I said. You have to spend money to make money, Dad replied. This gala will attract major donors. We're thinking of making it annual. And I'll need a company car, Lucy added, for site visits and donor meetings. I've been looking at the new BMW X7. A BMW? I blinked. For charity work? Image matters, Kylie. People need to see that we're successful, that we know how to manage money properly. Mom nodded enthusiastically. Lucy's right. We can't show up to donor meetings in some economy car. What would people think? I watched Lucy scroll through luxury SUV listings on her phone, already picking out custom interior options. The BMW she wanted cost more than most people made in a year. What about the actual charitable work? I asked. What causes are we supporting? The room went quiet for a moment. Well, Dad said slowly, we're still researching options. Due diligence is important. We want to make sure we choose something meaningful, Lucy added. Something that really represents the Martinez family values. Such as? Another pause. Education, Mom said finally. And community development. Arts programs, Lucy chimed in. Cultural enrichment. I noticed none of them mentioned the women's shelter where Grandma Elna had volunteered for 2 decades. The place where she'd spent every Thursday afternoon helping women rebuild their lives after escaping abuse. What about Helen's shelter? I asked. Grandma spent years there. Oh, that's so depressing, Lucy wrinkled her nose. We want something more uplifting, more photogenic. Photogenic? You know what I mean. Something that looks good in the annual report. That evening, I called my old college friend Yusuf. He'd gone to law school while I'd gotten my master's in nonprofit management, but we'd stayed close. He was one of the few people who knew what my family was really like. How's the foundation going? He asked. About as well as you'd expect. Lucy's picking out BMWs and planning $50,000 parties. Yikes. That's not exactly in the spirit of charitable giving. It gets worse. They're treating the whole thing like their personal slush fund. I'm starting to think I made a huge mistake. Did you keep copies of everything they promised? The mission statement? The budget projections? Some of it. Why? Just curious about the legal structure. Who's actually overseeing the spending? I laughed bitterly. The board of directors, which consists of my parents, Lucy, and me. Guess how often I get outvoted? Every time? Every time. Yusuf was quiet for a moment. You know, there are ways to build protections into foundation charters, safeguards against misuse of funds. Like what? Fiduciary responsibility clauses, automatic dissolution triggers if spending exceeds certain parameters. It's pretty standard in legitimate nonprofits. Too late for that now. The paperwork's already filed. Maybe not. If you're concerned about mismanagement, there might be options. Want me to look into it? I glanced toward the living room, where Lucy was showing Mom photos of designer gowns for the gala. Each dress cost more than a month's rent for most people. Yeah, I said quietly. I think I do. The next morning, I found Lucy in the kitchen, surrounded by fabric samples and catering menus. Morning, sis, she said cheerfully. Want to help me pick the color scheme for the gala? I'm thinking gold and champagne. Very elegant. How much is this party going to cost total? Don't worry about it. Dad says we need to establish ourselves as a serious organization. First impressions matter. I poured coffee and sat across from her. And after the party? What's the actual plan for helping people? Lucy looked up from her fabric samples, annoyed. Why are you being so negative? We're doing something amazing here. Something that will make the whole family proud. I just want to make sure we're actually helping people, not just helping ourselves. Of course we're helping people, Lucy snapped. We're creating jobs, supporting local businesses, raising awareness. That's help. I stared at my sister, realizing she genuinely believed what she was saying. In Lucy's world, throwing an expensive party was charity work. Right, I said. How silly of me. That afternoon, I texted Yusuf. Let's talk about those safeguards. Yusuf's law office was nothing like the mahogany and marble palace where we'd read Grandma's will. His downtown practice occupied the 3rd floor of a converted warehouse, with exposed brick walls and second-hand furniture that somehow managed to look both professional and welcoming. Coffee, he offered, gesturing to a small machine in the corner. Please. I settled into the chair across from his desk, watching him pour 2 cups. Yusuf had always been methodical, even in college. It's what made him a good lawyer. So, he said, handing me a steaming mug, tell me exactly what's happening with this foundation. I pulled out my phone and showed him Lucy's latest Instagram post, a selfie in front of the BMW dealership with the caption, "Shopping for the perfect ride to serve our community." Martinez Foundation. Shart service with style. Jesus, Yusuf muttered. How much is that car? 85,000, plus the custom interior package. He scrolled through more posts. Lucy at a spa day, claiming she needed to recharge for all the important work ahead. Mom at a designer boutique, selecting her gala outfit. Dad at the country club, networking with potential major donors, over 18 holes. This is insane, Yusuf said. What's the foundation's actual budget for charitable giving? That's the thing. Nobody's talking specifics. Every time I ask, they say we need to establish our presence first. Yusuf leaned back in his chair. Okay, walk me through the legal structure. Who has signing authority? The board votes on expenditures over $5,000. Under that, Lucy has discretionary spending as executive director. And the board is? Mom, Dad, Lucy, and me. So you're always outvoted 3-1. Exactly. Yusuf opened his laptop and started typing. Tell me about the charter. Did you review it before signing? I felt heat creep up my neck. Not really. Mom said it was standard boilerplate language. Kylie, his voice was gentle but firm, never sign legal documents without reading them. Ever. I know. I was emotional, and they were pressuring me, and I just wanted it over with. Okay, what's done is done. But there might be options. Foundation charters can be amended, especially if there's evidence of mismanagement. He pulled up a legal database on his computer. There's something called a fiduciary responsibility clause. Basically, it sets strict limits on administrative expenses and triggers automatic dissolution if those limits are exceeded. Dissolution? The foundation shuts down and remaining assets get transferred to a designated backup charity. It's designed to prevent exactly what your family is doing. I sat forward. Could we add something like that? Potentially. It would require a board vote, but if you frame it right. He paused, thinking. What if you presented it as protecting the family's reputation, insurance against any appearance of impropriety? They're obsessed with their image. That might actually work. Yusuf started the drafting language on his screen. Standard practice is to limit administrative costs to 10% of total assets. Anything above that triggers a mandatory audit, and if the audit confirms misuse, the foundation dissolves within 48 hours. 10% of $1.2 million is $120,000 total for everything: salaries, expenses, events, cars, the works. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. They've probably already spent half that on party planning. Exactly, which means if this clause passes, they're already in violation. But they'd never vote for it if they knew what it really meant. Yusuf grinned. That's where legal language comes in handy. We bury it in a broader governance and accountability amendment. Make it sound boring and responsible. Your parents love appearing responsible, right? They live for it. Perfect. I'll draft something that looks like standard nonprofit best practices. Lots of whereas clauses and legal jargon. The dissolution trigger will be hidden in subsection C of paragraph 4. And if it passes, then you have a nuclear option. The moment their spending exceeds 10%, you can trigger the audit. When it confirms what we both know is happening, the foundation dissolves and the money goes to whatever backup charity is named in the clause. I thought about Helen at the women's shelter, about Grandma Elena spending her Thursdays there, helping women who had nothing rebuild their lives. Could the backup charity be Helen's shelter? Absolutely. In fact, that makes it even more bulletproof. A charity your grandmother actively supported, continuing her legacy. Very hard to argue against. Yusuf worked for the next hour, crafting language that sounded official and boring while hiding a legal time bomb in the fine print. When he finished, he printed out the amendment and handed it to me. The Martinez Family Foundation Governance and Accountability Enhancement, I read aloud. Catchy, right? Your family will see enhancement and accountability and think it makes them look more professional. What do I do now? Call a board meeting. Present this as a way to strengthen the foundation's credibility. Emphasize how it protects the family reputation and ensures proper stewardship of your grandmother's legacy. I folded the papers carefully. And if they vote yes, then you wait. Document everything they spend. The moment they cross that 10% threshold, you file for the audit. And if they vote no, then at least you'll know exactly where you stand. That evening, I found my family in the living room, surrounded by gala planning materials. Lucy was on her laptop browsing jewelry websites. I need diamond earrings for the gala, she announced, something that photographs well. Of course, sweetheart, Mom said. First impressions are everything. I cleared my throat. I'd like to call a board meeting. Dad looked up from his tablet. What for? I've been researching best practices for family foundations. There are some governance standards we should implement to protect our reputation. What kind of standards? Mom asked suspiciously. Accountability measures, transparency protocols, the kind of thing that shows major donors were serious about proper stewardship. Lucy perked up. That sounds very professional. Exactly. I had a lawyer friend draft some amendments, standard stuff that will make us look more credible to potential contributors. Dad nodded approvingly. Smart thinking. When do you want to meet? Tomorrow morning. I can present the amendments, and we can vote. Perfect, Mom said. I love that you're taking initiative, sweetheart. I smiled and headed upstairs, the amendment tucked safely in my purse. In my room, I pulled out my phone and started recording a voice memo. Board meeting scheduled for tomorrow, October 15th. Purpose: to vote on governance amendments that will limit administrative spending to 10% of total assets. Current spending already includes $50,000 for gala venue, $85,000 for Lucy's BMW, plus additional expenses for wardrobe, jewelry, and miscellaneous items. I paused the recording and looked out my window at the perfectly manicured lawn, the circular driveway where Lucy's new BMW would soon be parked. If the amendment passes, I continued, the foundation will be in immediate violation of its own charter. I stopped recording and plugged my phone into the charger. Tomorrow, my family would vote to destroy themselves, and they'd do it with smiles on their faces. The only question was whether I'd have the courage to pull the trigger when the time came. The board meeting lasted exactly 12 minutes. All in favor of the governance and accountability enhancement? Dad asked, barely glancing up from his phone. 3 hands shot up around the dining room table. Mine stayed down, not because I opposed it, but because I wanted to seem reluctant. Kylie, Mom prompted. I just want to make sure we're not creating unnecessary bureaucracy, I said carefully. Sweetheart, this was your idea, Lucy laughed. Besides, we're not doing anything wrong. These rules won't affect us at all. I raised my hand slowly. Okay, unanimous then. Dad signed the amendment with a flourish. There, now we're bulletproof. No one can question our integrity. Speaking of which, Lucy said, pulling out her tablet, I need approval for the catering upgrade. The original menu was too basic. I found this amazing company that does molecular gastronomy. How much more? I asked. Only $15,000, but the presentation will be incredible. Picture this: champagne spheres that burst in your mouth, caviar that looks like pearls. Mom clapped her hands together. Brilliant! That's exactly the kind of detail that gets people talking. I did quick math while they gushed about edible flowers and gold leaf garnishes. The gala was now approaching 6 figures, and that was before Lucy's dress, jewelry, and the professional hair and makeup team she'd booked. I also need to discuss the retreat, Lucy continued. What retreat? I asked. Team building. Amber found this amazing wellness resort in Napa Valley. 3 days of strategic planning and bonding exercises. For who? The core team. Me, Amber, Mom, and Dad. You're welcome to come if you want, but I know you're not really into spa treatments. How much? Lucy waved dismissively. It's an investment in our effectiveness. Maybe 20,000, all inclusive. 20,000 for a spa weekend? It's not a spa weekend. It's a strategic retreat. There's a difference. Dad nodded sagely. Team cohesion is crucial for any successful organization. I watched my family rationalize their way to a luxury vacation funded by Grandma's money, the same money she'd saved by clipping coupons and buying generic brands, money she left specifically for my happiness. When is this retreat? I asked. Next month, right after the gala, when we'll need to decompress and plan our next phase. Our next phase? Expansion, Mom said excitedly. We're thinking of opening a West Coast branch. Lucy could oversee operations from Los Angeles. I've always wanted to live in LA, Lucy added, and the networking opportunities would be incredible. After the meeting, I went straight to my car and called Yusuf. It passed, I said without preamble. Unanimous? Unanimous. And they just approved another $35,000 in spending. Jesus, what's the total now? I pulled up the calculator on my phone. Gala venue, $50,000. Catering upgrade, $15,000. Lucy's BMW, $85,000. Her gala outfit and jewelry, maybe $10,000. The Napa retreat, $20,000. Plus Amber's salary, office expenses, marketing materials. You're already over the limit. Way over. And they're planning a West Coast expansion. Kylie, you need to document everything. Every receipt, every approval, every conversation. When this goes to audit, you'll need proof. I've been recording our meetings on my phone. Good. What about receipts? Lucy posts everything on Instagram. She's basically creating evidence for me. Yusuf laughed grimly. Social media narcissism for the win. Okay, here's what happens next. I'll file the audit request with the state. Given the clear violations, it should trigger within 72 hours. And then? Then you have 48 hours to notify all board members of the dissolution. The remaining assets get transferred to the backup charity immediately. Helen's Shelter. Your grandmother would be proud. That evening, I found Lucy in her room, surrounded by shopping bags and dress boxes. Want to see my gala outfit? She asked, not waiting for an answer, before pulling out a stunning silver gown. Oscar de la Renta, and look at these shoes. She held up a pair of crystal-encrusted heels that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. They're beautiful, I said honestly. I know, right? And wait until you see the jewelry. She opened a velvet box to reveal diamond earrings that caught the light like tiny stars. The photographer is going to die. Lucy, can I ask you something? Sure. She was admiring herself in the mirror, holding the dress against her body. Do you ever think about the people we're supposed to be helping? She paused, looking at me in the reflection. What do you mean? The actual beneficiaries. The people who need the money. Of course I think about them. That's why we're working so hard to make this foundation successful. You can't help people if you don't have credibility. But what if we just gave the money directly to existing charities? Places that are already helping people? Lucy turned around, her expression shifting. Kylie, what's gotten into you lately? You've been so negative about everything we're doing. I'm not being negative. I'm just wondering if there's a more direct way to help. This is the direct way. We're building something lasting, something that will help people for generations. That takes investment. Investment in BMWs and spa retreats? Lucy's face hardened. Those aren't luxuries. They're necessities. How am I supposed to meet with major donors if I look like I shop at Target? How are we supposed to plan effectively if we're stressed and burned out? Grandma Elena managed to help people for 20 years without a BMW. Grandma Elena was from a different generation, She didn't understand modern philanthropy. I stared at my sister, seeing her clearly for maybe the first time. In Lucy's world, helping herself was helping others. Every indulgence was justified. Every luxury was necessary. "You're right," I said quietly. "I'm sorry for questioning you." Lucy's smile returned instantly. "That's okay. I know this is all new to you, but trust me, I know what I'm doing." I left her room and went to my own, where I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recorder. October 20th, 9:47 p.m. Lucy just confirmed the gala outfit cost approximately $15,000. She also stated that luxury items are necessities for effective philanthropy and that direct charitable giving is outdated. She believes that helping herself is equivalent to helping others. I paused the recording and looked at the amendment sitting on my desk, now officially part of the Foundation's charter. In 3 days, Yusuf would file the audit request. In less than a week, everything would be over. My phone buzzed with a text from Lucy. "Thanks for listening, sis. I know you don't always understand, but I'm so glad we're doing this together." I stared at the heart emoji, feeling something twist in my chest. Lucy genuinely believed she was doing good work. She'd convinced herself that every selfish act was actually selfless. I typed back, "Me too. Can't wait to see how it all turns out." The irony wasn't lost on me. For the first time in my life, I was telling my sister exactly what she wanted to hear, and it was the most honest thing I'd ever said to her. The email arrived at 8:43 a.m. on a Tuesday, buried between a Groupon offer and a reminder about my dentist appointment. Alright, Martinez Family Foundation, mandatory audit notification. My hands shook as I opened it. The state's nonprofit oversight division had reviewed the foundation's expenditures and found significant discrepancies requiring immediate investigation. The audit would commence in 48 hours. I screenshot the email and forwarded it to Yusuf with a single word. "Done." His reply came back instantly. "Holy shit. Are you ready for this?" Was I? I stared at my phone, thumb hovering over the keyboard. In 48 hours, my family's world would implode. The foundation would dissolve, the money would go to Helen's shelter, and the Martinez name would be splashed across every society page in San Antonio as a cautionary tale about greed and mismanagement. "Yes," I typed back, "I'm ready." But first, I had to get through the next 2 days without losing my nerve. I found Lucy in the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, while she gestured wildly with her free hand. "No, no, no," she was saying. "The ice sculpture has to be perfect. It's the centerpiece of the entire event." She noticed me and held up one finger, mouthing 5 minutes. "I don't care if it costs extra," she continued. "This is the Martinez Family Foundation's debut. Everything has to be flawless." I poured coffee and sat at the counter watching my sister orchestrate what would be her last hurrah. The gala was 3 days away. The audit would hit the day before. "Okay, perfect," Lucy said, hanging up. Crisis averted. The ice sculptor was trying to cheap out on the design, but I convinced him to do it right. "How much extra?" "Only 3,000. Barely a rounding error." She opened her laptop and started typing. "I'm updating the final guest list. We're at 400 confirmed attendees, including the mayor, 3 city council members, and that tech billionaire who just moved here from California." "Sounds impressive." "It's going to be legendary. The Chronicle wants to do a full spread, and I heard Channel 5 is sending a crew." Lucy's eyes sparkled with excitement. "This is exactly what Grandma would have wanted." I nearly choked on my coffee. "You think Grandma would have wanted a $100,000 party?" "She would have wanted her legacy celebrated properly. She would have wanted the Martinez name to mean something in this city. It already meant something. She spent 20 years volunteering at the women's shelter." Lucy waved dismissively. "That was nice, but it was small scale. We're thinking bigger. We're creating lasting impact." "What lasting impact?" "Brand recognition, community presence. The foundation will be synonymous with excellence in philanthropy." I stared at my sister, marveling at her ability to twist every selfish impulse into noble purpose. And the actual charity work will follow naturally once we establish our platform. You can't help people if they don't know who you are. Mom breezed into the kitchen, arms full of shopping bags. The final dress fitting went perfectly, she announced. I look absolutely stunning. The photographer is going to love it. What photographer? I asked. The one documenting the gala for our annual report. We hired a professional to capture everything. How much did that cost? $5,000, but it's an investment. These photos will be used for years. Dad appeared in the doorway, checking his watch. The car's here. Ready for the venue walkthrough? Lucy jumped up, grabbing her purse. This is so exciting. Want to come, Kylie? I'll pass. I have some calls to make. After they left, I sat alone in the empty kitchen, surrounded by the detritus of their planning. Fabric samples, catering menus, guest lists, expense reports, evidence of their excess scattered across every surface. I pulled out my phone and called Helen at the shelter. Kylie, honey, how are you holding up? I'm okay. Listen, I wanted to give you a heads up about something. You might be getting some unexpected news in the next few days. What kind of news? Good news, I hope. It's complicated, but there might be some funding coming your way. Significant funding. Helen was quiet for a moment. This is about your grandmother's money, isn't it? How did you know? She told me what she was planning. Said you were the only one who understood what really mattered. She was worried about your family, about what they might do. She knew? Elna was nobody's fool. She saw how they treated you, how they took you for granted. She said you had more strength than you realized. I felt tears prick my eyes. I'm not sure about that. She was. And she made me promise to look out for you when the time came. Said you might need someone in your corner. Helen, if this money does come through, what would you do with it? Build the new wing we've been dreaming about for years. Double our capacity. Maybe add job training programs, childcare services. We could help so many more women get back on their feet. That sounds perfect. Kylie, whatever you're planning, be careful. Family money brings out the worst in people. After we hung up, I walked through the house, looking at everything with new eyes. The marble floors, the crystal chandeliers, the oil paintings worth more than most people's homes. All of it built on Dad's business success, maintained by Mom's social climbing, and now threatened by Lucy's greed. I found myself in Grandma Elena's old room, which Mom had converted into a home office after the funeral. The walls were now covered with foundation planning materials, timelines, budgets, promotional mock-ups. Everything that had once been warm and personal was now cold and corporate. On the desk sat a framed photo from the foundation's first board meeting, all four of us smiling around the dining room table. We looked like the perfect philanthropic family, united in our desire to help others. The photo was a lie, just like everything else. My phone buzzed with a text from Lucy. Venue looks amazing. Can't wait for you to see it tomorrow at rehearsal. This is going to be the event of the year. I typed back, can't wait. That evening, the family gathered for dinner, everyone buzzing with excitement about the upcoming gala. Lucy had changed into workout clothes, claiming she needed to stay in shape for the photos. Mom was reviewing her speech notes. Dad was practicing his introduction of Lucy as the foundation's director. I'm so proud of what we've accomplished, Dad said, raising his wine glass. Elena would be thrilled to see her granddaughter carrying on her legacy of service. To the Martinez Family Foundation, Mom added, and to making a real difference in our community. To family, Lucy said, looking directly at me, and to doing good work together. They all turned to me expectantly. I raised my glass, meeting each of their eyes in turn. To getting exactly what we deserve. We clinked glasses and I took a long sip of wine, tasting the bitter irony of the moment. Tomorrow, they would rehearse their triumph. The day after that, they would watch it all crumble. And I would finally understand what Grandma Elena meant when she said I was stronger than I realized. The countdown had begun. The majestic theater sparkled like a jewelry box. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across the restored Victorian ceiling, while white orchids and gold linens transformed the historic venue into something from a fairy tale. "It's perfect," Lucy breathed, standing center stage in her silver gown. The Oscar de la Renta creation caught the spotlights, making her look like a movie star accepting an award. I stood in the wings, watching the final preparations. Servers in black uniforms polished champagne flutes, while the molecular gastronomy team arranged their edible art. The ice sculpture, a towering phoenix rising from flames, dominated the center of the room, its wings spread wide in frozen triumph. 5 minutes to showtime, the event coordinator announced. Lucy grabbed my arm as I passed. "Can you believe this is really happening? Look at this crowd." I looked out at the gathering guests. San Antonio's elite had turned out in force: oil executives, tech entrepreneurs, political figures, and society matrons dripping in diamonds. The Chronicle's photographer moved through the crowd, capturing candid shots of the city's power players. "It's impressive," I said. "Impressive? It's legendary. Do you see who's here? That's the governor's wife by the bar. And oh my God, is that the Astros owner?" Mom appeared beside us, radiant in midnight blue silk. "The Chronicle wants a family photo before Lucy's speech. Where's your father?" "Networking with the mayor," Lucy said. "As usual." I spotted Dad across the room, deep in conversation with a group of men in expensive suits. Even at his daughter's charity gala, he was working angles, building connections, expanding his empire. "There's Helen," I said, nodding toward the entrance. Helen Baker stood just inside the doors, looking uncomfortable in a simple black dress among the designer gowns and tuxedos. She clutched a small purse and scanned the crowd nervously. "Why did you invite her?" Lucy asked. "She knew Grandma for 20 years. She should be here. I suppose. Just keep her away from the VIP section, okay? She doesn't really fit the image we're going for." I walked over to Helen, who looked relieved to see a familiar face. "This is quite something," she said, gesturing at the opulent surroundings. "It's definitely something," I agreed. "How are you holding up?" "Honestly, it's overwhelming. I keep thinking about what this money could have done at the shelter. We could have fed families for months with what they spent on flowers alone." A server approached with a tray of champagne spheres, Lucy's molecular gastronomy centerpiece. Each one cost $50 and would burst on your tongue with a pop of bubbles. "Would you care to try our signature appetizer?" the server asked. Helen shook her head. "No, thank you." I took one, feeling the strange texture dissolve in my mouth. $50 for 3 seconds of novelty. Grandma Elena would have been horrified. "Ladies and gentlemen," the event coordinator's voice boomed through the sound system, "please take your seats for this evening's program." The crowd moved toward the dining tables, each one decorated with centerpieces that cost more than most people's weekly groceries. I found my assigned seat at the family table, right next to the stage where Lucy would soon deliver her speech. Dad took the podium first, his practiced smile gleaming under the lights. "Good evening, friends. Tonight, we celebrate not just the launch of the Martinez Family Foundation, but the continuation of a legacy. My late mother-in-law, Elena Martinez, believed in the power of community, the importance of giving back, and the responsibility that comes with good fortune." Polite applause rippled through the audience. She would be so proud to see her granddaughter Lucy carrying on that tradition of service. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the executive director of the Martinez Family Foundation, Lucy Martinez." The applause was thunderous as Lucy took the stage. She looked radiant, confident, born for this moment. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began, her voice carrying perfectly through the theater. "When my beloved grandmother passed away, she left us more than money. She left us a mission." I watched the audience hang on her every word. Lucy had always been magnetic, able to command attention and admiration effortlessly. The Martinez Family Foundation represents a new model of philanthropy. We believe in strategic giving, in building sustainable programs that create lasting change. We're not just writing checks, we're building bridges. More applause. I noticed several people taking notes, probably reporters or potential donors. Our first initiative will focus on women's empowerment and economic development. We're planning a comprehensive program that will provide job training, financial literacy, and mentorship opportunities. I glanced at Helen, who was listening intently. None of this was news to her. Lucy had never mentioned any specific programs before tonight. But first, Lucy continued, we want to share our commitment to transparency and accountability. Behind me, you'll see our founding contribution displayed for all to witness. She gestured to a large screen that had been hidden behind black curtains. The curtains parted to reveal a giant digital display showing the foundation's bank balance. $200,000. The audience gasped appreciatively. Several people pulled out phones to take pictures. This represents my grandmother's trust in our family's ability to do good work, Lucy said, and we won't let her down. The screen flickered. For just a moment, the numbers seemed to shift, but then stabilized. Lucy didn't notice, too caught up in her moment of triumph. Over the next year, we plan to distribute grants totaling. The screen flickered again. This time, the flicker lasted longer. The audience began to murmur, pointing at the display. Lucy turned to look, and her face went white. The screen now showed account balance 0.0. That's not right, Lucy stammered into the microphone. There's obviously a technical malfunction. But the screen didn't change. $0. 0 cents. The murmur in the audience grew louder. People were standing now, craning their necks to see better. The Chronicle photographer was snapping pictures rapidly. Ladies and gentlemen, Lucy said, her voice shaking, if you'll just give us a moment to resolve this technical issue. Her phone buzzed, then Dad's phone, then Mom's. All three of them were staring at their screens with identical expressions of horror. I pulled out my own phone and saw the email I'd been expecting. Martinez Family Foundation. Dissolution notice. Effective immediately due to fiduciary violations. Lucy looked at me across the table, her face a mask of confusion and growing panic. Kylie, she whispered into the microphone, forgetting it was still on. What's happening? 400 of San Antonio's most influential people turned to stare at me. The Chronicle photographer swung his camera in my direction. The molecular gastronomy team stopped serving their $50 bubbles. I stood up slowly, smoothing my simple black dress. Unlike my family, I hadn't spent thousands on my outfit tonight. I dressed for a funeral, not a celebration. What's happening? I said, my voice carrying clearly through the silent theater, is exactly what should happen when people mistake charity for a shopping spree. The screen behind Lucy continued to display that beautiful, damning 0. And for the first time in my life, I had everyone's complete attention. The silence in the majestic theater was deafening. 400 pairs of eyes stared at me as I walked toward the stage, my heels clicking against the marble floor like a countdown. Lucy gripped the podium, her knuckles white against the polished wood. Kylie, what are you doing? I climbed the steps to the stage, each one feeling like a small victory. Behind me, I could hear whispers starting to ripple through the crowd. I'm doing what Grandma Elna would have wanted, I said, taking the microphone from Lucy's trembling hands. I'm telling the truth. Ladies and gentlemen, I addressed the audience, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I apologize for the confusion, but there's something you need to know about the Martinez Family Foundation. Dad shot up from his seat. Kylie, stop. This isn't the time or place. Actually, Dad, this is exactly the time and place. All these people came here tonight thinking they were supporting charity. They deserve to know where their potential donations were really going. I gestured to the screen still displaying zeros. That balance isn't a technical malfunction. The Martinez Family Foundation has been officially dissolved by the state of Texas for violating its fiduciary responsibilities. Gasps echoed through the theater. I saw reporters frantically typing on their phones. You see, I continued, when we established this foundation 3 months ago, we included something called a fiduciary responsibility clause. It limits administrative expenses to 10% of total assets. Anything above that triggers an automatic audit and dissolution. Lucy found her voice. That's not what happened. Tell them that's not what happened. 10% of $1.2 million is $120,000, I said, ignoring her. Would you like to know how much this family spent on administrative costs in 3 months? I pulled out my phone and opened my notes app. $50,000 for tonight's venue, $15,000 for molecular gastronomy catering, $85,000 for Lucy's BMW, $20,000 for a spa retreat in Napa Valley, $15,000 for designer gowns and jewelry, $5,000 for a photographer, $3,000 for an ice sculpture. With each number, the crowd's murmur grew louder. I could see people doing math in their heads, their faces shifting from confusion to disgust. That's over $190,000 in 3 months, I said, on cars and parties and spa treatments, while claiming to help women in need. Those were necessary expenses, Mom shouted from her table. You can't run a professional organization without proper resources. You're right, Mom, you can't. That's why the remaining funds have been transferred to an organization that actually helps women in need. I gestured toward Helen, who was sitting frozen in her chair. Helen Baker runs the women's shelter where my grandmother volunteered for 20 years. Every Thursday afternoon, Elena Martinez was there, serving meals, helping women find jobs, babysitting children while their mothers attended job interviews. Helen stood slowly, her face flushed with embarrassment at suddenly being the center of attention. The entire $1.2 million is now going to expand that shelter, I continued, to build a new wing that will double their capacity, to fund job training programs, childcare services, and transitional housing, to actually help women instead of helping ourselves to expensive cars. The crowd was buzzing now, some people applauding, others looking scandalized. I spotted Raphael Wilson, a longtime family rival, grinning widely as he whispered to his wife. Lucy grabbed my arm. You can't do this. That money was meant for our family. No, Lucy. That money was meant for whatever brings me happiness. And this? I gestured to the chaos around us, to the reporters taking pictures, to the screen still showing 0. This brings me tremendous happiness. Dad was on his phone, probably calling lawyers. Mom sat with her head in her hands, her perfect makeup starting to run. The new wing will be called the Elena Martinez Center for Women's Empowerment, I announced, because my grandmother understood something this family forgot. Charity isn't about making yourself look good. It's about making other people's lives better. Lucy's face crumpled. How could you do this to us? We're your family. Family doesn't steal from each other, Lucy. Family doesn't manipulate grief into greed. Family doesn't spend a dead woman's money on designer handbags while pretending to care about helping others. The Chronicle photographer was having a field day, capturing every moment of the Martinez family meltdown. Lucy swayed on her feet, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was happening. I need to sit down, she whispered. Of course you do, I said gently. Those shoes probably cost more than most people make in a week. Lucy's legs gave out. She collapsed onto the stage, her silver gown pooling around her like liquid mercury. The crowd gasped, several people rushing forward to help. Is there a doctor in the house? Someone called out. She's fine, I said into the microphone. She's just experiencing the natural consequences of her choices. Raphael Wilson stood up in the audience, his voice carrying clearly through the theater. Well, I'll be damned. Martinez philanthropy at its finest, everyone. Legendary indeed. Scattered laughter rippled through the crowd. Some people were already heading for the exits. eager to spread the gossip. Others remained glued to their seats, unwilling to miss a moment of the spectacle. Helen finally made her way to the stage, her eyes wide with shock. "Kylie," she said quietly, "is this real? The money is really coming to the shelter?" "Every penny," I confirmed, "plus interest. Your women's center just became the best-funded shelter in Texas." Helen burst into tears, covering her face with her hands. "Elena would be so proud of you." Behind us, paramedics were checking on Lucy, who was conscious but clearly in shock. Mom and Dad huddled together, their perfect evening turned into a public nightmare. I looked out at the remaining crowd, at the reporters still documenting every moment, at the ice sculpture slowly melting under the hot stage lights. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said into the microphone one final time, "thank you for coming tonight. Your presence here has made this moment possible. The Martinez Family Foundation is dead, but the Elena Martinez Center for Women's Empowerment is just beginning." I set the microphone down and walked off the stage, leaving my family to face the consequences of their greed alone. For the first time in 28 years, I was exactly where I belonged. The construction crew arrived at dawn, their hard hats bright yellow against the gray morning sky. I stood in the parking lot of the women's shelter, watching them unload equipment and roll out blueprints for the Elena Martinez Center for Women's Empowerment. "I still can't believe it's real," Helen said, joining me with 2 cups of coffee. "6 months ago, we were struggling to keep the lights on. Now we're building a whole new wing." "Grandma would have loved this," I said, accepting the steaming mug. "She always said the best revenge was living well." My phone buzzed with another text from Lucy. I'd been getting them daily since the gala. Angry rants, tearful apologies, desperate pleas for reconciliation. This one was different. "I saw the news story about the shelter opening. Mom says I should congratulate you. So, congratulations, I guess." I showed Helen the message. She shook her head. "Your sister still doesn't get it, does she?" "Lucy's never understood anything that doesn't directly benefit her. I don't expect that to change now." The news story Helen mentioned had run the night before, a follow-up piece about the shelter's expansion. The reporter had interviewed several women whose lives had been transformed by the programs we'd funded with Grandma's money. Job training, child care, transitional housing, real help for real people. "Miss Martinez?" A young woman approached us hesitantly. "I'm Sarah. I wanted to thank you." I recognized her from the news story. She'd escaped an abusive marriage with her 2 young children and was now working as a medical assistant after completing our job training program. "You don't need to thank me," I said. "You did all the hard work. But without this place, without the programs, I don't know where we'd be." Her voice caught. "My kids have their own room now. My daughter's in dance class. My son made honor roll." Helen put her arm around Sarah's shoulders. "That's what Elena would have wanted to hear." A black sedan pulled into the parking lot, and my stomach tightened. Dad got out, looking older than I remembered. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled. "I'll handle this," I told Helen. Dad approached slowly, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. "Kylie? Dad? Can we talk?" I glanced at Helen, who nodded and walked back toward the shelter with Sarah. "What do you want?" I asked. "To apologize. To try to explain." "There's nothing to explain. You stole from Grandma's memory to fund your lifestyle. The state investigation made that pretty clear." Dad winced. The investigation had been brutal, exposing years of questionable business practices beyond just the foundation scandal. His company was facing multiple lawsuits, and several major clients had dropped him. "We lost everything," he said quietly. "The house is in foreclosure. Your mother's having to work for the first time in 30 years. Lucy's living in a studio apartment, working retail." "I know. I read the papers. Don't you feel anything? We're your family." I looked at him for a long moment. This man who'd raised me to be invisible, who taught me that my worth was measured by my willingness to sacrifice for others' comfort. "You're right," I said finally. We are family, and family tells each other the truth even when it hurts. The truth is, you got exactly what you deserved. Dad's face crumpled. Your grandmother would be ashamed of what you've done to us. No, Dad. She'd be ashamed of what you did to yourselves. She left me that money because she knew I'd use it right, and I did. A pickup truck pulled up, and Yusuf got out, carrying a box of legal documents. Morning, Kylie. Mr. Martinez? He nodded politely to my father. Yusuf's helping us set up the foundation's permanent legal structure, I explained, making sure this money keeps helping people for generations. Dad looked between us, finally understanding. You planned this from the beginning. I planned to protect Grandma's legacy. You made it necessary by trying to steal it. The media's calling you a hero, Dad said bitterly. The woman who exposed her own family's greed. I don't care what the media calls me. I care about this. I gestured toward the construction site, where workers were already digging the foundation for the new wing. Helen emerged from the shelter with a group of women and children. They were heading to the job training center we'd opened in the building next door. Real programs, real help, real change. Kylie! One of the children broke away from the group and ran over. Look what I made in art class! She held up a drawing of a house with stick figures in front. A woman and 2 children, all smiling under a bright yellow sun. That's beautiful, Maria, I said, kneeling down to her level. Is that your new home? Uh-huh. And that's me and Mama and my baby brother. We're happy now. Dad watched this exchange, his face unreadable. This is what $1.2 million looks like when it's actually used to help people, I told him. Not cars or parties or spa retreats. This. Maria skipped back to her mother, clutching her drawing. The group continued toward the job center, their voices mixing with the sounds of construction. I should go, Dad said. Yeah, you should. He walked back to his car, shoulders slumped in defeat. I watched him drive away, feeling something I hadn't expected. Pity? Not regret, not guilt, but genuine sadness for a man who'd had everything and thrown it away for the illusion of more. Yusuf joined me as the sedan disappeared around the corner. How are you holding up? He asked. Better than I expected. It's strange. I thought I'd feel guilty about destroying my family, but they destroyed themselves. I just documented it. Any regrets? I looked at the construction site, at Helen organizing volunteers, at Sarah walking her children to the daycare center we'd funded, at all the lives being rebuilt with money that would have been wasted on luxury cars and designer gowns. Just one, I said. I regret waiting so long to do it. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Lucy. I hate you. I deleted it without responding and turned off my phone. Some relationships couldn't be saved, and some people never learned. But some did, and sometimes that was enough. The construction foreman called out that they were ready to pour the foundation. Helen invited me to do the honors, to officially break ground on the Elena Martinez Center. I picked up the ceremonial shovel, feeling the weight of it in my hands. Somewhere, I could almost hear Grandma Elena's voice. Mija, some families heal, others just expose the wounds. I drove the shovel into the earth and began building something better.